Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm called Mr. Okoth. I'm a teacher of English and Literature in Mwasere Girls High School in Taita Taveta County. And I want to start series of taking us through some of the literary pieces of work, that is the set books, that are examinable in our schools and are currently being undertaken by the classes that are in Form 3, Form 2, Form 1, and the Class 8 that are yet to join Form 1s. And I will start off with this book that I'm holding. This is Fathers of Nations. It is the book that is replacing Blossoms of the Savannah, which is basically a novel. And it is written by an author called Paul B. Vita. Now, I always tell students, and I want to repeat in this particular first podcast, that anytime you lay your hands on a literary piece of work in the name of a book, pay very close attention to specific things. Number one, pay close attention to the title of the book, because titles of books always reveal a lot about the message in the book. Number two, pay close attention to the pictorials in the cover, both hind and the front cover of that particular book. Because whereas people say that you cannot judge a book by its cover, the truth of the matter is that in literature, books and literary messages are all embedded in the covers of those books. So no literary scholar just comes up with a design or a cover design of a book without any intended message. So in literature, we say you judge a book, particularly a literary book, by the design, the content, the pictorials of the cover. Now, when you look at this book, what on the cover, what do you see? So up here, we have the title, Fathers of Nations. And now, when you look at this particular photo here, there are two things that you will notice. The first thing, you will notice that this is a rubber stamp. This rubber stamp has stamped a document that looks like a sealed document. But something sinister is coming out. Whereas in this particular stamp, it is written rejected. It is written rejected in the stamp. What is portrayed on the document is approved. Ordinarily, if the stamp is indicating rejected, what is supposed to be left by the ink on the stamped surface is supposed to be rejected too. If it is approved on the stamp, the ink left here is supposed to be indicating approved. This particular kind of depiction reveals something about the content of this book. The fact that we are having a document that is sealed, and this document, when you look at, for example, the Kenyan Constitution or most acts that are always presented to the president for assent, they are always sealed like this. And it is after being received by the president and accepted by the president rather than approved by the president, the ribbon is cut off and it becomes officially operational. So in this particular case, we are having a document which looks like a law, which looks like a constitution, that has been stamped, approved, with a stamp that is indicated rejected. Then the title is indicated what? Fathers of Nations. That is something that demands a lot of literary inquiry. And that is where we are going to start our conversation in this particular podcast. And my podcast is clearly directed to the Kenyan student who is having very serious challenges in navigating through literary pieces of work and excelling in English paper 2 and excelling in English paper 3. Let's start with this particular document. When you look at the document that is on the cover of that page, it looks like a constitution. It looks like laws of the land. It looks like things that govern the development of the land. It looks like some of what we call the project manifestos or the project, those lucrative project proposals that the government flaunts around in the name of their manifestos. But more importantly, this photo looks like the constitution. A constitution that is stamped approved with a rubber stamp that is indicating rejected. When you go through the book Fathers of Nations, or even before you go into the book, for those who have not attempted to read this book, I want to maybe jog your memory regarding the title Father. Who is a father? A father is somebody who is in charge of a home, in charge of a family. Who is a father? A father is somebody who is welcoming to the children, somebody who corrects the children, somebody who guards the children, somebody who ensures that the well-being of his children is at the center of his heart. That is who a father is. And therefore, a father is not expected to do anything that is going to harm his children. A father is not expected to do something that is going to put the family into problems. A father is supposed to be defending the family from both internal and external aggression. That is the call to fatherhood. Why would we have Paul Vita calling this book Fathers of Nations? We are going to be treated to a group of presidents from the vast continent of Africa meeting in Banjul, the Gambia, to discuss to discuss Africa. Remember, when you go to different countries in Africa, their presidents are called fathers, father of the nation. Heads of states are called fathers of nations. And while some of them are called fathers of nations, some of them have remained permanent fathers of those nations. They never want to lose elections. They never want to leave power. They never want to leave offices. And they use all dubious ways to retain those offices. Some of them get into those offices when they are young. They grow old into those offices. Some of them, if not hounded out of office through coups, like what we saw happening recently in the West Africa, some of them actually die in offices. That is the irony of what is being depicted in the cover of this book. And when we are having a constitution being approved with a rejected stamp, it simply depicts the kind of misnomer that we are having in the African political society, where when elections are conducted in most African countries, those who have been rejected by the masses are the ones who are installed into the offices. And those who have been approved by the masses are the ones who are never installed into those offices. Number two, this rubber stamp can also mean that most of these fathers of nations in Africa, when they get into the office, they reject the same constitution that they said during campaigns they are going to approve and they are going to get hold of. So it brings the irony and the betrayal that is going to be embedded throughout this particular book. And therefore, dear student, for some of you who have gone through some of the few pages of this book, Fathers of Nations, you will be able to relate the front cover of this book and some of the happenings in that book. I want to give you just, for example, one. When preparations to receive the presidents into the Banjul of Gambia is on top gear, a number of disruptions take place. We are told that there's a lot of demolitions that are taking place along the highways leading to the Pinnacle Hotel. And these particular demolitions, we are made to understand from the story that they are livelihoods of children of Gambia. Livelihoods that are supposed to be protected by their father, the president of Gambia. We are told that these livelihoods are disrupted so that other fathers from other nations can be able to comfortably cruise through to the meeting venue. That is the irony that the book is going to bring out. And therefore, we are going to be treated to a group of people calling themselves fathers of nations, but are coming into Banjul, the Gambia, to discuss the destruction of their nations, to discuss the destruction of Africa. This is what happens. And I want to conclude my podcast, the introduction of this particular book, by saying this. Fathers of Nations is a highly political book. And pay attention to use of symbolism, pay attention to use of sarcasm, pay attention to use of different styles to bring out the theme of betrayal, political betrayal, economic betrayal, social betrayal that has taken place in the continent of Africa and has been perpetrated by the presidents and the heads of state and heads of governments in the African continent. And as you relate with this book as a student, as you read every page of this book as a student, I want you to be able to have time and reflect the happenings in the country or the Republic of Kenya and try to see, does Kenya fit into what Paul Vita is bringing out in this book? And I always encourage students in any particular school that if you are a student who wants to excel well in literature, if you are a student who wants to excel well in English, do not read set books for the purposes of lessons that the teachers are attending. Read set books as a source of enjoyment. Read set books so that you can be able to relate what is being brought out in that particular set book to what is happening in the Kenyan society. Alongside that, if you want to excel and be updated in the literary works that are going around in our schools and that are going to be examinable, do not just read them alone. Read them alongside other materials. Access the Constitution of Kenya. Access the daily newspapers. Watch news when you are free. And sometimes I wonder, with schools that don't allow students to watch news, how do you want the students to be updated when students don't watch news? Most of the things that are being discussed here are actually going on in our country. How many times have we seen, for example, when a president or even our president or head of state is going for a state visit in another country, they carry a host of delegations. It's like the life of the whole country is disrupted just because some 2, 20, 10 or 5 people from other countries are coming to that country. Like you cannot move. Normal transport is interfered with. Everything is interfered with. Like you can imagine, Paul Vita is saying in this particular book that where the presidents are lodging, like the whole security system in the whole country is focused on the Pinnacle Hotel and where the presidents are residing and leaving the other parts of the country unguarded. Which kind of father does that? What do you do, or how do you feel when you meet somebody's father who is having a wife and who is having children, sitting in a hotel and eating very good food in that hotel, but back at home, the children are sleeping hungry, the wife is sleeping hungry, there's no food at home? That is a father who is not caring. That is somebody who is an abuse to fatherhood. That is somebody who negates the true depiction of who a father is supposed to be. And therefore, as we shall be starting the journey of this book, Fathers of Nations, we are going to bring out some of these particular things that are of importance to the candidate or to the student in understanding this particular book. Finally, I want us to go to the hind cover of this particular book, because the information that is given behind the cover of every book not only summarizes what the book is all about, but it brings out some of the contentious issues that must be looked into by those who are going to analyze that book. And I would read what Paul Vita writes behind this particular book. And he says that the very best of the world's best have discovered a way to develop Africa. And we are told that in this book, there's some laureates in Africa who came together and came up with a document that to the best of their understanding, if implemented to the latter, was going to make Africa a great continent. And then the writing continues, Way Omega. That was the document that was designed by what Paul Vita calls the very best of the world's best. Now, Africa's heads of state are at a summit to approve it as their common development strategy. If they do, it promises Africa will start developing immediately. Unknown to the summit are several aggrieved conspirators who are plotting to defeat Way Omega and replace it with a rival strategy, Path Alpha. And this is supposed to be sinking deep in the mentality and the minds of the children or the students who are going to cover this book. I keep on telling students that African countries are not independent. There's no independence that has taken place in the African countries. We cannot talk of independence in African countries when countries like, for example, Kenya, even their own education system is coming from colonialist countries. It cannot be that when they have got problems, they always run to the outside world to always come and help them sort out their mess. It simply means they don't trust each other. Now, why would other people conspire to defeat Way Omega? The truth of the matter is that in African countries, even during general elections, rarely do African countries democratically elect the president that they want. And that is why we have this stamp. The people will go to the polls, they will vote for the president they think is going to, the president who carries their hopes, the president who is going to serve them. But there's a lot of conspiracy that takes place between the end of the voting process and declaration of the winner. That is the point where people who have got vested interest in any African country, they push their agenda, and the person who is going to push the agenda as the leader is always declared the winner. If you are in Kenya, you know what we are talking about. You know what happened on the day elections ended and the day the winning presidential candidate was declared, and what happened in the Supreme Court. These are things that you need to know. Kenya as one of the African countries, and I would always use Kenya as one of the, as an example, because most of our students have not read about other countries. Now, the truth of the matter is that when you look at Kenya as a country, Kenya has got its own, for example, way of doing things. Even in the institution of marriage, in the institution of relationship, Kenyans and traditional African heritage espouses the reality of man falling in love with a woman and marrying each other, and that marriage lasting, and that marriage giving rise to children, and that marriage leading into prosperity of both the families. And then now we have a group of conspirators who have brought in a suspicious document that is supposed now to be discussed by the Kenyan society in the name of LGBTQ. That is an example of what these conspirators did to Way Omega by bringing in Path Alpha. They bring their foreign understanding of what they want African to be, and they force it down the throat of Africans, and they use a group of conspirators, majority of whom are always Africans, to ensure that that thing happens. Which people are now promoting LGBTQ? Africans. Which courts are now authenticating the presence of LGBTQ in the society? Let's take, for example, Kenya, the Supreme Court of Kenya. Who are seated in the Supreme Court of Kenya? They are Kenyans, they are Africans who well know the culture and the social standing of Kenya, the social standing of Africa. But they will always work in cahoot with these particular external conspirators to ensure that external interferences and documents and doctrines and cultures are always infiltrated into the pure or the purity of the African dream, the purity of the African hope, the purity of the African desire. That is how Path Alpha, found itself into the summit. Now, Path Alpha is not carrying the hopes of Africans designed by Africans to be implemented by Africans. It is designed by outsiders. It is designed by the Western world, the Eastern world, the world beyond Africa. And they design this thing based on their mentality, on what they think Africa should be, according to them. Simply put, there's what we call subtle colonialism. Subtle means you don't see the colonialists, but they are there. They come in form of grants, they come in form of aids, they come in form of help, they come in form of democracy, they come in form of healthcare, they come in form of education, but their aim is always to ensure that African countries remain subject and subservient to whatever they want done. And this is what Paul Vita says behind the cover, that their path, they say, is the only way to develop Africa. Should the summit still approve, underline the word approve. Remember, this is a document that is supposed to be approved. That is the document that is going to be discussed in the summit. So in as much as we are talking about this document being used symbolically to mirror the constitution of African countries, this document, as far as this book is concerned, it is the document that is supposed to be discussed in Banjul, where the presidents are meeting. Will it be rejected or will it be approved by the leaders? Now, should it turn around and approve Path Alpha instead? Fathers of Nations is a satire on contemporary African politics. And that is it. And satire simply means that you are criticizing the political fabric of the African continent, but using very laughable ways, using laughable words to bring out the incompetence, to bring out the evil nature of some of the African leaders and those we look forward to as fathers or political fathers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this journey. Now on, until we shall complete this book, Fathers of Nations, and when we shall go to the next book, which is Samaritan, and the other set books, after which we are going to go through other parts of the English syllabus. But if you bump onto this video, I want you, after watching this particular video, to kindly subscribe our channel, the Voices of Change. Kindly subscribe to our channel. We are going to share with you a lot of content as far as academics is concerned, as far as politics is concerned, as far as social well-being of the Kenyan child is concerned. Welcome, and let us walk this journey together.